A soldier came home and heard his daughter screaming. What he saw inside made him break down. The desert sand still clung to Sergeant Marcus Thompson's boots as he stood before his front door, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. After 18 months deployed in Afghanistan, he was finally home. The familiar blue paint was peeling slightly, and the garden his wife Sarah used to tend looked overgrown, but it was still the most beautiful sight he'd ever seen. He had planned this moment for weeks, wanting to surprise his family. No phone calls, no warnings, just pure, unadulterated joy when they saw him walk through that door. But as his hand touched the brass doorknob, a piercing scream shattered the quiet afternoon air. It was Emma, his 7-year-old daughter, and the sound was filled with pure terror. Every instinct Marcus had developed as a soldier kicked in as he heard that scream again, followed by desperate sobbing. His heart hammered against his chest as worst-case scenarios flooded his mind. If this story moves you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to Trillionaire in Love for more inspiring content like this. Marcus burst through the front door, his military training taking over as he moved swiftly but silently through the house. The screaming was coming from upstairs Emma's bedroom. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his mind racing with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. The house felt different somehow, emptier, and he noticed details that made his stomach clench. Unopened mail piled high on the hall table, dishes stacked in the sink, visible from the stairway, and a general sense of chaos that was so unlike the home he'd left behind. As he reached the top of the stairs, Emma's door was slightly ajar, and what he saw through the crack made him freeze in place. His beautiful little girl was sitting on her bed, clutching a photograph to her chest, tears streaming down her face as she rocked back and forth. But she wasn't alone. Sarah, his wife, was sitting beside her, and she looked nothing like the woman he'd married 8 years ago. She was thin, too thin, her hair unwashed and hanging limply around her face. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of countless sleepless nights, and her clothes hung loosely on her diminished frame. "Mommy, why won't Daddy come home?" Emma wailed, holding up the photograph. It was Marcus's military portrait, the one they'd taken before his deployment. "All the other kids' daddies come home from work every day. Why doesn't mine?" Marcus felt his knees buckle as the weight of realization crashed over him. This wasn't a break-in or an emergency. This was the daily reality his family had been living. Sarah was trying to comfort Emma, but her own voice was broken and hollow. "Baby, Daddy is serving our country," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's very far away, helping keep us safe. Sometimes daddies have to stay away longer than we want them to." "But Jenny's daddy came back from his work trip yesterday," Emma protested, "and Tommy's dad picks him up from school every Friday. I want my daddy to pick me up from school. I want him to read me bedtime stories like he used to." Marcus watched as Sarah's face crumpled, and she pulled Emma closer to her. "I know, sweetheart. I miss him too. Every single day I miss him too." That's when Marcus couldn't hold back any longer. The strong soldier, the man trained to face any enemy, broke down completely. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the true cost of his service, not just on him, but on the 2 people he loved most in the world. He had been so focused on his duty, on serving his country and protecting freedom, that he had somehow missed the fact that his own family was falling apart in his absence. He gently pushed open the door, and both Emma and Sarah looked up with expressions of shock, disbelief, and then overwhelming joy. Emma's scream this time was different. It was pure happiness mixed with disbelief. "Daddy," she shrieked, launching herself off the bed and into his arms. Marcus caught her and held her tight, feeling her tiny body shake with sobs of relief and joy. Sarah sat frozen on the bed, her hand over her mouth, tears flowing freely. "Is it really you?" Sarah whispered, as if speaking too loudly might make him disappear like a mirage. Marcus set Emma down gently and moved toward his wife, taking her hands in his. They felt so small and fragile, nothing like the strong, capable hands he remembered. "I'm here," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm really here, and I'm not going anywhere." The reunion was everything he had dreamed of, and nothing like what he had expected. As the initial joy settled, the real conversation began. Sarah told him about the struggles, how she had been working 2 jobs to make ends meet while he was deployed, how Emma had started having nightmares about him never coming home, how she had been going to therapy because the anxiety of not knowing if he was safe had become overwhelming. There were days, Sarah admitted as they sat together on Emma's bed, their daughter finally asleep between them, when I wondered if I was strong enough to keep going. The military support groups helped, but nothing could fill the hole you left behind. Marcus learned that Emma had been acting out at school, getting into fights with kids who talked about their fathers. She had been seeing the school counselor because she'd started believing that if she was better or smarter, maybe her daddy would come home sooner. The guilt hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I thought I was protecting you both," he said quietly. "I thought by serving, by being away, I was making the world safer for you, but I never realized that we needed you here more than the world needed you there," Sarah finished gently. The days that followed were both wonderful and challenging. Marcus had to learn how to be a civilian again, how to be a father to a daughter who had grown and changed so much in his absence, and how to be a husband to a wife who had become incredibly independent out of necessity. Emma was clingy at first, afraid that if she let him out of her sight, he might disappear again. She would wake up in the middle of the night and creep into their bedroom just to make sure he was really there. Sarah, meanwhile, struggled with giving up the control she'd had to take on. She had made every decision for 18 months, managed every crisis, handled every bedtime tear and every school problem alone. Learning to share those responsibilities again wasn't as easy as either of them had expected. Marcus faced his own challenges too. The hypervigilance that had kept him alive overseas didn't just switch off at home. He startled at loud noises, had trouble sleeping, and found himself constantly scanning for threats that didn't exist in their quiet suburban neighborhood. The transition from soldier to father and husband required a different kind of courage than anything he'd faced in combat. But slowly, day by day, they began to heal as a family. Marcus started volunteering at Emma's school, making up for all the father-daughter dances and school plays he'd missed. He learned about her new friends, her favorite subjects, and the way she now preferred her sandwiches cut diagonally instead of straight across a small change that somehow represented all the ways she'd grown without him. He and Sarah began attending couples counseling, working through the resentment, fear, and disconnection that had built up during his deployment. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, tears, and moments when the distance between them felt impossible to bridge. But their love had endured separation by thousands of miles. It could survive the challenge of coming back together. Marcus also connected with other veterans who were facing similar challenges. He learned that what he was experiencing, the guilt, the difficulty adjusting, the complex emotions around military service versus family obligation, was shared by thousands of other servicemen and women. This community became a lifeline, helping him understand that choosing his family didn't make him any less of a patriot or a hero. The turning point came about 3 months after his return. Emma had a school project where she had to write about her hero. Marcus expected her to write about a famous person or maybe a fictional character. Instead, she wrote about both of her parents. "My heroes are my mom and my dad." She read aloud at the school assembly, with Marcus and Sarah beaming in the audience. "My dad was a soldier who kept people safe far away, and my mom was a soldier who kept me safe at home. Now my dad is home, and he's still my hero, but in a different way. He makes pancakes on Saturday mornings and helps me with my math homework. He reads me stories and tucks me in at night. Sometimes being a hero means fighting bad guys, but sometimes it means just being there when someone needs you." As Marcus listened to his daughter's words, he realized that his greatest battle hadn't been fought on foreign soil, it had been fought right here, in learning how to balance duty to country with duty to family. and in understanding that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply show up for the people who love you. The screaming he had heard that day when he came home hadn't been from physical danger, it had been from emotional pain, from a little girl who just wanted her daddy to come home. And while he couldn't undo the 18 months of absence, he could make sure that every day going forward, she knew she was his priority. Marcus made the decision to transition out of active duty, moving to a reserve position that would allow him to serve his country while also being present for his family. It wasn't an easy choice. His career, his identity, and his sense of purpose had all been tied up in being a soldier. But he realized that his most important mission was right here at home. The family that had been broken by distance and duty slowly became stronger than they'd ever been before. They learned to communicate better, to appreciate the time they had together, and to support each other through difficulties. Emma's nightmares stopped, Sarah's anxiety lessened, and Marcus found a new sense of purpose in being the father and husband his family needed. A year later, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes and said, "Daddy, I'm glad you came home." "Me too, sweetheart," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Me too." That night, as he lay in bed next to Sarah, listening to the quiet sounds of his family sleeping peacefully around him, Marcus understood that true strength sometimes means admitting when you need to change course. His service to his country had been honorable and necessary, but his service to his family was equally important. He had learned that being a hero doesn't always mean charging into battle. Sometimes it means simply being present for the people who need you most. The story of Marcus Thompson reminds us that heroism comes in many forms. Sometimes it's about sacrifice and service to something greater than ourselves. And sometimes it's about recognizing when the greatest service we can provide is simply being there for the people who love us. Family isn't just something to fight for, it's something to live for, to be present for, and to choose every single day. This story shows us the power of choosing love and presence over duty and distance. If it touched your heart, please like this video, share it with others who might need this message. Leave a comment telling us about a time when someone showed up for you when you needed them most. And don't forget to subscribe to Trillionaire in Love for more stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit and the power of love in all its forms.